Welcome to Next Gen Rentals, the go-to podcast for exploring the evolving landscape of the vacation rental ecosystem. Here, we dive deep into the world of vacation rentals, share experiences, and tackle the industry's biggest challenges. Each episode features conversations with key players in the vacation rental space, discussing everything from technology to market dynamics.
Next Gen Rentals is brought to you by our main sponsor, Mr. Alfred. Mr. Alfred specializes in making vacation rental management effortless. Stay tuned to discover how they can transform your rental business.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Next Gen Rentals podcast. Today, it's my pleasure to host Mr. Yasin Valimulla, fondly known as Mr. Palm Jumeirah, but also the founder of the Luxury Address.
Yes.
Yasin brings nearly 2 decades of experience in Dubai's real estate, making significant strides from iconic locations like Palm Jumeirah to luxury villa communities.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show.
Well, pleasure to have been invited for the podcast.
So, as I said, you are very well known from in the industry and in social media as Mr. Palm Jumeirah.
I am, yes. Yeah.
But you have recently launched several brands.
Yes.
We've been following you.
Yep.
Businesses, initiatives. So,
Yep.
Can you please give us a brief introduction or explanation about your journey since the beginning of your career?
Yeah. So I started in the real estate journey. I mean, interestingly, actually, I lived in Spain in 2001, 2002. When I lived there, I was living in Malaga, and I used to go to Marbella a lot at the time. I was at the university in Malaga. And Marbella then and even now has an amazing landscape when it comes to the properties there. And it just tweaked an interest when I used to go to Marbella. Although I wasn't in the property field, it was just when I used to visit some of the villas there, that this would be such an interesting industry to get into. So when I went back to the UK, finished my degree, I went into real estate, but very, very different. I was selling properties in Manchester, very small, 2 up, 2 down student properties, nothing very interesting or exciting, but it was a good stepping stone to get into the world of real estate. I did that for around 5 years in the UK, 2 of which I had my own company, selling investment properties. 2009 market obviously turned, crashed, and there was all the kind of global issues that we had in 2009, which is when I decided to move to Dubai. I had a friend who lived out here. So he suggested, why don't you come out here? The real estate landscape here is very similar to the US in the sense it's, each individual is technically self-employed. So you partner with an agency, you become a partner of that company, and then you basically transact, do deals as your own personal brand. And then you just have an agreement with the company of your split. So there's no salary involved. Mm-hmm. So you're your own entity in that sense. And because I was self-employed before I got here. So for me, the transition was pretty straightforward. Mm-hmm. So 15 years I've been in Dubai, so a very long time, I would say. Worked for multiple different agencies, started as broker, senior broker, managers, and so forth. Then I was with Knight Frank as a partner for about 3.5 years. I was one of the guys who was pivotal in selling the Royal Atlantis project. Wow. On the Palm Jumeirah. And the reason they actually brought me into the team was because I used to specialize on the Palm. So it kind of made sense. And by that time, I was a director for another agency. So I was with Knight Frank for 3.5 years. I left to start my own agency. In the interim, whilst I was doing my kind of leaving period, I was approached by a number of different agencies, come and work for us and this and that. Initially, I was very reluctant to join anyone because I already had my kind of game plan, 12-month strategy of what I was going to do. But there was one particular company who was very insistent, very persistent, and they came up with a really good package, to be very honest with you. And I said, okay, fine, I'll do it for 1 year. That was my agreement with them on the basis I helped them expand. They were a team of 7 people when I joined in January 2022. I left February 2022, I joined. There were 7. I left in February 2023, so I did my 12 months, and we were 176. Oh, wow. Just to kind of understand the growth of the company within 12 months.
Amazing.
So I think my job was done there. I'd say so. So I think, yeah. It would have been easier to have stayed there, but, I really stuck to my guns. Even though I could have stayed there, it would have been the easier choice to have stayed there. But for me, having lived here for so long and not having my own agency, call it ego, call it what you want, it had to be done. So I left in Feb. I started my agency in April, May time, by the time my license came through. And yeah, it's been quite the whirlwind since I started the company. I mean, it's never easy starting an agency, but Real estate's quite a competitive field. There's thousands, over 4,000 agencies now in Dubai, thousands of brokers. So it's a very, very competitive field. But I thrive in competition anyway. So for me, it's great. It's like that. That's the landscape of Dubai real estate. So yeah, this is where I am now.
Amazing story. And yeah, maybe entrepreneurship is about ego, but it's also about doing change and transforming things and making an impact. And,
yeah, for me,
your experience is you need to do something.
And for me, I've always had a growth mindset. I don't like to be stagnant in one place. And as soon as, I should have maybe started a company years ago, but looking back, actually this was the right time, because the last 4 or 5 years with the Knight Frank experience, being pretty much a partner in a startup agency as well, expanding the company, understanding how to take it from scratch to where it was, that's actually helped a lot in now me branding and actually starting my own agency. So I think that the journey was worthwhile, and it was worth the wait.
Makes sense. So now that you talk about the moment, I think what you are on the main experts in luxury.
Yes.
So what's happening in Dubai? There is a huge hype on luxury. I mean, it's the main question. What's
on
going
everyone's
on?
lips, right?
What's happening? How long will it last? Why? What are the trends? What are the market dynamics? So how can you help answering this question? Even for dinners with the family now in Christmas.
Of course. So, see, I've always, since I've been here, so my target market has always been Palm Jumeirah, beachfront properties, branded residences, mid to high tier. That's what I've specialized in, prime and super prime.
Sorry, how do you classify mid? And I mean, in terms of the value of the property. So what's the value of mid?
Mid ticket would be anything kind of 5 million plus.
Okay.
Yeah. So, level entry would be $1 million up to 3 to 4 to 5. Mid would be 5 to 10 to 15, and then anything above that would kind of be the higher ticket stuff, because then there's a very small percentage of people who are going to have that type of money or equity. So regarding the question you asked regarding the luxury side of things, so Dubai initially was not really synonymous for luxury, I would say. There was a lot of projects that were built initially, even before I came out here, 2000, 2009, which were luxury branded projects. But Dubai realized very early on, if they wanted to expand that population, they had to cater for not just luxury, it had to be catering for a full 360, a full dynamic, basically an ecosystem. So for years, we've had a lot of projects that I would class as level entry to mid-tier, and then kind of higher tier, but not so many higher tier projects. What's interesting is happened, and I can say this from experience myself, is the Knight Frank project, for example, which we had, the Atlantis project, was launched in 2017. When it was launched, no one believed in it. People thought it was massively overpriced. No one was willing to pay $7 million for a 2-bedroom in Dubai. Even though it was branded as Atlantis, it is Atlantis, it's on a beachfront with the world-class amenities as well. But people just didn't see the value at that time of, they were just like, it's just not the type of money we want to be putting in for a 2-bedroom in Dubai. Because you could buy a villa at that time on the Palm for $7 million. Mm-hmm. As time went on, developers upped their game, bigger brands started coming in. But the biggest turn for me was when the dynamics and the logistics of the clientele changed in Dubai. So the demographics is what I mean. So when COVID happened and we had 6 months of panic. It was a global panic everywhere. Dubai was no different. But we were one of the adopters, and we came out of it a lot quicker than everywhere else. November 2020, someone literally put a switch on. And what happened was we had a lot of people unhappy in Europe, in other parts of the world, not only because of the way their governments had handled the COVID situation, but also because of taxes and what are people really getting for the taxes they're paying, right? People started exploring. Dubai's always been one of the most popular holiday destinations, so that's nothing new. That wasn't something they had to explore. They were very well aware of it, but maybe a lot of people didn't really think about moving here or maybe living here or working here or buying property here. But as soon as like I said, November 2020 happened and people were kind of unhappy with what was going on in their countries, the demographics of buyers changed in Dubai. Historically, a lot of Arabic, a lot of Indians, Pakistanis, a lot of British were big buyers in Dubai, Chinese as well. But even the British, if you actually look at their background, they're originally Indian or Pakistani British, similar to myself. So that was the bulk of buyers that were buying here. And a lot of them are value-driven buyers, so they want value for money, right? The Europeans started entering the market in November 2020. A lot of Dutch, Spanish, French, Germans, just Europeans in general, also Australians, Americans, and so forth, but a lot of Europeans. Now, when the Europeans started coming into the market, they were categorizing and they were comparing a price per square foot compared to London, to Rome, to Paris, to Geneva, these type of places. And on a price per square foot, Dubai was massively underpriced. Even though people here thought it was overpriced, actually, when you compare it, it was very, very underpriced. Even compared to Mumbai, it's still very underpriced. So what you started happening is you had a big influx of European buyers come in. And this is where the Atlantic thing comes in. As a project, 10% of the project sold over 4.5 years, which is pretty slow, selling a project, but it's because no one believed in the project. From November 2020 to November 2021, 90% of that project sold out. So a project that was stalling, was difficult to sell, sold out in 1 year from when November 27. And if you looked at the demographics of the buyers who were buying these properties, 80% were European buyers. And this is before the Russian war had started. Because a lot of people think, that maybe that's the influx of the Russians. It wasn't, because the Russians were not entering the market at that time. And as more and more Europeans came, then people were getting more comfortable. More Europeans were getting comfortable buying here. They'd come out here, they'd see the lifestyle here, the projects, the developments, the amenities, the security, the safety. There's so many plus points living here, plus a tax-free element of it as well. So I think a lot of these clients started coming here, and they single-handedly started raising the bar and raising the prices of these properties. Whilst that was happening, the developers then had to up their game as well, because European buyers were a lot more intricate with their details. They wanted to make sure if that was a luxury project, was it really a luxury project? How do you class? Everyone's definition of luxury is very different, in Dubai especially. So the developers have started upping their game. If you look at developers like Omniat, from their first project to what they're launching now, all their projects have been incredibly well, but even the level they've had to increase just because to continue that synergy of attracting those clients, they have to really give more and more and more. And now we're at a level now where the prime and super prime market in Dubai is number one globally. There's more $10 million plus property homes sold in Dubai than any other city in the world. More than LA, more than New York, more than Hong Kong, historically, and London. These were historically the places. So if you look at this year's stats, and even last year, but this year specifically, Dubai has sold more $10 million plus homes than anywhere in the world. That's a huge...
but that could be a tricky metrics, considering that all are newly built properties. Correct?
A lot of them are newly built, but you're also seeing a trend as well. So there's a huge influx of new builds. Also on the Palm specifically, what I've seen and what everyone has seen is obviously the Palm Jumeirah itself, the whole island concept, freehold property on a beach, very unique concept, and still nothing in comparison. There's no comparable to it, even though Palm Jebel Ali has been launched. As it stands, there's nothing comparable to the Palm for villa living. A lot of owners, a lot of investors especially, what they started doing is buying these villas because they were very old. Nakheel built these 15 years ago. Designs are not modern, contemporary, or very classic, I would say. So a lot of guys were buying these villas, doing a full refurb. When I'm saying a full refurb, people are spending maybe 7 to 8 million dirhams on a 5,000 square foot villa. That's a lot of money to spend on a 5,000 square foot villa. But what that did is, and again, if you look at historical pricing of the Palm for the last 3 years, especially villas have tripled in price. I don't think there's anywhere in the world properties have tripled within such a time frame. So a garden home that was 8 million at COVID time, now is 24, 25, 26 million. And this is a standard villa. And people were buying these, spending 8 million, and now people are achieving 45. And recently someone just sold a renovated villa. So this is not a custom villa made from scratch for 55 million. So again, and if you look at the demographics of buyers, investors, it's all Europeans. A lot of British developers are coming in, European developers are coming in, and the target buyers are also Europeans as well. And of course, in the last 15 to 18 months, a lot of Russian buyers, naturally, with the whole influx of them. And again, they are very similar to Europe in the sense they have a certain criteria and they understand what a luxury property is compared to something that might look on the facade as luxury, but when you actually go into nitty-gritty, it's not. So the buyers are a lot more obsessive with the details, which is great because developers have had to up their game. And I think overall, it's benefiting everyone. Of course, you've now got a very small market, which is prime and super prime. But, the reality of it is there's demand for that type of property. As much as people think there's so many projects being launched, there is. at the prime and super prime, but most of which are being sold out. I mean, I'm not one of the buyers, I can tell you that. I wish I was one of those buyers. But there is a real appetite for these type of properties, because that same branded residence for them to buy in Miami or London or whatever, whichever major city, would be made 2 to 3 times more. And then do they still have the security and the safety and the tax? So, there's a lot of things at play here.
But I mean, if you invest, I mean, I would assume that you have the end user. Okay, the end user, it's normal, compared with different countries, lifestyle, security, done.
Yeah.
But when it comes to investors, it's a matter of numbers, right?
Yes.
And most of the metric in when you compare the ROI is rental.
Yes.
And rental in Dubai also has doubled probably in the last 2 years.
Yeah. It's a very, very strong rental market here.
Hyper premium and mid range, as you mentioned. Right? So there is a lot of we start hearing that the rental prices are not sustainable, especially for the middle class in Dubai, for the middle and working class in Dubai.
Yes.
So how can we foresee or forecast an increase of value or a sustained value of these properties in secondary market? Let's say if there is the ROI component, if the rentals cannot be sustained at this price, or we understand that rentals will be sustained and something else needs to change in the market in Dubai.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the developers have understood this as well. So there's a lot of new projects. So if you look at the breakdown of the projects that are being launched, there's a lot of level entry and mid-class properties being launched as well. And that is to target the guys that are now getting priced out of the projects where they were maybe paying 200,000 dirhams as an example for a villa for rent in Dubai Hills, for example, and now that villa is 350,000, which then becomes unrealistic for them, right? And that has happened in quite a number of communities. So that clearly shows there's still a shortage with certain types of properties, which is where a lot of these developers are now coming in. Of course, that's going to take 3 to 4 years before these properties are even handed over. So then what you're seeing migration of people now moving further inland. So obviously anything closer to Sheikh Zayed Road has more of a premium as further in you get. And there are a lot of projects that are built already. It's just generally people in Dubai want to be as close because of the schools and the access and the malls. But I think naturally what you're seeing is people are migrating either further south, Dubai South, these types of areas, Jebel Ali, these type of areas, or they're going further in your Ranches 2, Ranches 3, and even further out. There's so many communities even built by Damak as well. So that's where you're seeing. So people who genuinely have a budget of a certain amount that can't stay in a community. Of course, as tenants, you do have rights. A landlord can't just kick you out of the property. But if the landlord was to sell the property, for example, gives you notice and then you have to vacate legally, that's when you can be in a bit of a pickle, because then you're like, okay, I've been paying 200. I can't stay in this community because it's nearly doubled. What do I need to do? And that's where people are now migrating further and further out.
But then is when also you incorporate in the analysis the cost of opportunity of living in Dubai.
Yes, of course.
Because if Dubai is like a good place for savings, no taxes, high salary.
Yeah.
But when you cannot save, the difference between Dubai and the home country,
100%,
it gets much more narrow.
Yeah, because it gets narrower. Yeah, and then, because as you know as well, you've been living here a long time, same as me. We sacrifice a lot to come out live out here. As much as we have the amazing lifestyle here, family and friends are the two bigger things that you sacrifice, right? And then you're right. It then gets to a point, because if your take home after is very minimal compared to what you could be back in the UK or wherever. Wherever you come from.
Home country,
that's when people start questioning.
What's the cost of sacrificing the family?
Exactly. Especially when families get to a level where they have children, school. I mean, I know myself. I've got 2 kids at school.
Same here.
It's astronomy. You need to really have a real secure income to make sure, if you want to live a certain lifestyle, a certain income has to be there in order to pay for everything, right? And then if you're not living the life you want to live, then you're going to start questioning, whether it's where you want to stay or not. And I think the sooner the newer projects come online with more choice for people, I think then the rentals, in the last 6 to 7 to 8 weeks, I would say things have definitely settled down. We've had 3 years of really rapid growth, unsustainable, I would say as well. Maybe it's a taboo, but I think so. In some of the areas, even for me, I'm like, wow. It just doesn't make sense. Even where I live now, if I was to buy the property now, I couldn't buy the property I currently live in. If I wanted to rent my own property, I probably wouldn't rent it.
Yes.
Because it's ridiculous what the current rental price is for my property as well. So even for me, I'm lucky that I bought at the time, just right time actually, before the whole thing took off. I timed it, but it was coincidence. I don't think.
It's part of your
I don't think anyone can time the market. No matter how expert you are, I think timing the market doesn't work. It's time in the market that counts. And I bought it as a long-term thing, and it's worked out. But I think you're right. I think developers need to get more savvy. They need to become more inclusive, just so then we can sustain the population as well. Dubai is aiming for massive growth, and that's why they're building because they've got a 2030 and a 2040 plan. But in order to sustain those plans, you've got to make sure the population stays here as well.
And I think there is another element, which is the fear, the FOMO, no? the fear of missing out. Let me get your opinion about that.
Yeah.
So let's someone that bought 3 years ago at the bottom of the market, or maybe bottom plus 10, 20%.
Just before it started,
it happened. A lot of developments were handed over 2020 or something like this. And now they saw their properties doubled.
Yes.
So when do they sell? So the minute the market starts to show a small
slowdown,
not even slowdown, decrease in price, everyone will want to sell. Because everyone will want to get this benefit, this profit they have generated in the last 3 years.
See, it depends. And I'll tell you.
I would love to be challenged.
Yeah. It depends. See, I could put myself in that situation. I bought 5 years ago.
But you're an end user, and you need to find somewhere to live.
Yeah.
Therefore,
yes. So this is what I mean. So there's going to be two perspectives.
Correct.
So you're going to have the end user perspective, because it's a home. For them to sell and buy wouldn't make sense, because then they might make a profit, but now they're buying something else. But that price is also appreciated. So actually, in real terms, you're not really making any money, right?
No.
So as an end user, you'll probably stay back.
I think it's emotional, never investment.
Yeah. But then you've got the investors who return on equity have made ridiculous amounts of money. Now, the thing is, it all then comes down to the projects and how in demand these projects are. See, the thing is, ultimately, you can only say a profit has been made when you actually cash out and sell.
Correct.
So anyone can say my house is worth X amount, but if someone is willing to pay you that X amount, it's not actually worth, it's worth what anyone is willing to pay, basically, at the end of the day, right? So I think with certain projects, you are going to have more sellers wanting to cash out, understandably, because they've made a decent amount of profit, and then maybe they want to take that money and maybe put it into something else or not. But the scenario you're saying is, what if all these landlords or all these investors all of a sudden say, well, actually, we all want to cash out? Now, what then would happen is, if you were then a buyer and you saw a building with 8 properties, all of which are exactly the same, all trying to cash out at a similar level, then as a buyer, you would then take a step back and you'd play the game, right? You'd be like, okay, I've got 8 owners. Who is the most willing and who is going to be the most motivated to sell? Because at the end of the day, buyer wants the best price he can possibly get. Seller wants the highest price he's possibly going to get, right? It then comes down to who's the most motivated seller. Because everyone in Dubai has their own, this is why it's so interesting in real estate. Every time you talk to someone in Dubai who lives here especially, they have their own take on the market. And there's no right or wrong answer.
It's
like I can tell you that now. Yeah.
Everyone is a coach in football, right?
And for me, sometimes I meet people who have extremely strong opinions, which are very different to my opinions. I will always tell them what my opinion is, but I never say this is just because I'm in real estate, you should listen to me. I think everyone's entitled to an opinion. I think sometimes people are more swayed. So if I'm a buyer in the market, the buyer is always going to go and look at the negative stories. Why? Because he wants to use that as a leverage to downvalue something, right?
So that's why I'm a buyer, probably.
Yes.
Right?
So if you're a buyer, you'll only ever, and this is true, I was the same, right? You'll only focus on the story. I'm not saying negative, but stories that have a spin where maybe the market's
creating your story when buying.
There's a correction coming, or there's this, or there's that. So then you think, you get all these stories, and then in your head you could perfect. This is all my leverage, right? The sellers are looking at all the stories about every record that's been broken in the last 3 years. And I mean every record in Dubai that stood, price per square foot, most expensive penthouse, mansion, beachfront, you name it, brand resident, every record has been broken, right? So what are the sellers doing? The sellers are getting those articles and saving them that in their Dropbox, right? So when someone comes to them and says X, Y, and Z, they're like, oh, well, look at this. So there's always going to be two sides to it. And I think, ultimately it comes down to, when a client says to me, is it a good time to buy? There's actually not one answer. Whether a good time to buy or not comes down to the client, his motivation to buy, how many years does, what's his plan? 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? And what's his risk element as well? Once you look at all that, then I would never say to a client yes or no. I would first understand, okay, this is basically your criteria. Either I would say no, rent for a couple of years, because sometimes renting in the long can work out better for you than buying as well, right?
Absolutely.
So it's not only about buying.
Especially with the interest rates of today.
Especially with the interest rate. Although interest rates are going to be going down. I think the US has just announced
2024 they're going down.
Exactly. So they're going to be announcing the cuts. But you're right. So ultimately it comes down to the individual, and that's why it's never as easy as yes, always. Because if someone is telling me we're here maybe for a year or two, I probably wouldn't want them to, unless they say I'm here for a year or two, but I want to have something where I want to put on a holiday rental when I'm not in Dubai. Then I would say, okay, fine. Then we target certain areas. So when you aren't here, then you put that as an investment property. But then it depends on them whether that's something they would be looking into.
I agree with you. And even now that you mentioned holiday rentals, I always say the same. Holiday rentals is not a 6 month thing.
Exactly.
It's a 3 years to 5 years.
100%.
You have investment in furniture.
Yes.
You have renovations potentially. So yes. I mean, I had this thought about I'm staying 1-2 years in Dubai 12 years ago.
Yes.
And that's why I didn't buy. So I would say that's a bad way of...
Yeah.
Because I could have bought 10 years ago.
But I think the reality is, I think most people I came here with a 2 to 3 year plan. And
but
then
I think that's changed now. I don't know if that's your feeling.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do come here with 5 to 10 year plans now. Yes.
Or they stayed long enough to say, when are you going back? I don't know.
I think when we came, it was still very, people coming and going all the time, right?
And also Europe was strong enough,
a lot more stronger,
feel good to go back.
Yeah, that's
now,
true.
Where do you go back?
and that's true
Even
as well.
Singapore is what?
If you look at a lot of the hubs now, is it offering more than Dubai? It isn't. So actually, this is why people do have a longer interim period in their head here before they come.
That's the Dropbox of the seller.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's another story for the seller. Yeah.
Very good. So the conclusion is that we don't know what's going to happen.
If someone asks me now, where do you see the next 6 to 9 to 12 months? This is, and again, every 3 to 6 months, I probably have to change because the market is very dynamic here. So what I say now might not even be relevant in 2-3 months. But I do think because of the way the market's gone up so much in 3 years, we've definitely hit a ceiling on prices. There's been incredible number of launches. A lot of launches have sold out. I think a lot of people have bought projects where I think they've over-leveraged. They brought into project thinking we're going to exit. Market has now slowed down.
Off plan, you mean?
Off plan, yeah. I think there's going to be some communities where there's going to be a correction coming. Now, a correction isn't a crash. So crash is when, correction could be 5 to 10%. Just because maybe the hype is what actually was a false bubble within the prices.
And also because of the difference between advertised price and purchase price.
Of course, 100%. And it's good, obviously, now you've got websites like DXB Interact as well, where you can go and actually, everything is there, unit numbers, everything, which is amazing. So I think there'll certainly be correction in some communities, not all. Personally, I don't think beachfront communities are going to see a correction at all, if any. And then I also see there's going to be a lot of off-plan projects where a lot of investors overseas have bought. They're going to come to milestones where they have to make future payments. Now, some of these guys have bought on the basis of selling on a return of equity of 50 to 100% on the equity returns. But as the market slows down, maybe they're not going to make these returns, and maybe they don't have the money to even continue the payments. So I think you're going to see more and more motivated sellers in the off-plan scene as well coming in. And I think this is where the savvy investors are going to take a step back, and they'll say, okay, fine, we like some of these developments, but let's see if some properties now come back, even at OP, to what maybe they paid 2 years ago. And now they get to a stage where they have to sell. And when the market's at a correction, a lot of people take a step back. So then there's not going to be a huge basket of buyers out there. And then if you're a motivated seller,
accelerates.
And then you sell, the next day it's in DXB Interact, it's now recorded, right? So now that's the benchmark. So benchmarks are created going up, and he also created going down as well. So this is where the correction comes in.
One of my strong opinions is that the market dynamics going forward are going to be very local. Community 100%. By community.
Yes,
because
exactly.
they have a specific demand.
Yes.
And a specific price per square feet that cannot be compared.
Exactly. And every community in Dubai has its own real estate cycle. What's happening in downtown is different to one part. And within the Palm or any area, then you have sub-real estate cycles going on.
Absolutely.
So it's never that easy. So if you go onto the Palm, for example, what's happening in Atlantis is very different to what's happening in Shoreline. Mm-hmm. So which is like level entry properties there, right? So it's never that easy to even categorize by community as well.
Correct.
let's take a moment to thank Mr. Alfred, our sponsor. They're not just a property management system. They're a comprehensive solution for vacation rentals, offering everything from dynamic pricing to efficient marketing. Their intuitive platform simplifies operations so you can focus on growth. Excitingly, Mr. Alfred now offers a free light version, including a channel manager with connections to over 60 OTAs, available for an unlimited number of units and users. To learn more and to start streamlining your rental business, visit mr.alfred.com today.
So we covered the first part of about the real estate industry, market dynamics, how they see the industry going. But let's now focus on your business persona as an entrepreneur and as a social media person of interest.
Yeah.
Our audience are small and medium operators that want to scale, and they don't know which levers to tackle to scale. So how would you describe your experience in social media? What does it work? What didn't work?
Yes, I mean, I think I was a little bit slow initially with social media. I'm not in my 20s or 30s anymore. So I think I was a late adopter. I think I became quite active around 2017, I would say, 2017, 2018. So I think the personal branding element, which is what I mentioned earlier about when you're a real estate broker, advisor in Dubai, you need to have your own personal brand. You can't just keep leveraging on the back of your agency who you're partnering with. So I think I understood that very early on. So I always wanted to brand myself separate, because at the end of the day, if I'm a partner with an agency, but everything is about the agency, if I leave that agency, people will always connect me to the agency. So by having the Mr. Palm Jumeirah, which was very cheesy, but it was very catchy. So I had that name, and I was like, listen, people will remember. I said, it's really cheesy. Even I know it's cheesy, right? But people will remember that name. And it's unbelievable how many people recognize me at events or know me purely, and they don't even know what my name is most of the time, as Mr. Palm Jumeirah. And obviously it worked well because I specialized on the palm as well. But for me, it's been very, it's been very, very successful. I've tried to keep my page as very natural as possible. So it's less kind of robotic. It's less as a company, but it's more as an individual. So I've humanized the account.
Yeah. So having such a powerful persona and personal brand, how do you think it affects a company partnering with you? Do you think they feel threatened?
In what sense? You mean?
In the sense that you will overshadow the brand of the company.
Okay, the company.
Too much power over them.
I think, to be honest, I think once I started my personal branding, I was then mainly more senior positions with Knight Frank, with Keller Williams, and then with the Eva Real Estate, the agency I was with for a year. So I think for them, it was actually a value add. Okay. They use it as a leverage that the person who's heading our department, heading our team, heading our company is someone who has a huge following as well. So it gave them kind of that level of respectability, especially for the newer companies. Maybe for Knight Frank, it was different because Knight Frank itself is a global brand. But I think they like to use that as a leverage as well, that someone that we have within our firm has their own personal brand. So I think they didn't see that. And I think, I think a lot of companies now actually want their advisors to have a personal brand. Just because as a company, the company's responsibility is to do certain things. But when it comes to personal branding, that's actually responsibility of the individual advisor. And I think it's only the last 2 to 3 years where you've seen a huge influx of people understanding that. And that's why a lot of agents are, very, very big on social media, making strategies, which is perfectly fine. I think you need to do that. But I also think you need to do it in a correct way. I think there's a lot of copy, cut and paste, what I see online. And it all, in my opinion, is a little bit boring. Everyone just seems to be copying everyone. No one's coming up with anything kind of genuine or anything different. It's all like, well, he's doing that. Maybe I need to be doing that. And I think even with content, it changes all the time. What's popular, or what type of video walkthroughs or reels that are popular now may not then be popular within 3 or 6 months. Then things are changing. So I think if you're at the forefront of things, I think it's great. And I think if you have your own ideas, of course you need to go with the trends at the same time. But I think you need to kind of mix the trends of what's going on with your own kind of creativity as well, which is what I try and do. I've always tried to, I see my strategy on personal branding is not to have a strategy. And I know it sounds quite funny, but the reason
genuine, no?
Yeah, it's all very genuine. I don't, my company strategy is different. So the company has a strategy in terms of what we post, when we post, all that kind of stuff. With my personal Instagram account especially, I haven't done that. But I've seen more success on that account than any, and I've got multiple different accounts with my multiple other businesses. I've tried, but the Mr. Palm Jumeirah has done way much better than any other brand. And I think a lot of it when I talk to clients who reach out on me, is because I do a lot of reels and videos where I talk as well, and I think people can find that human connection as well, and they think, okay, this person seems approachable, seems like he knows what he's talking about. He's been in the market quite a long time. Rather than just me making a video about walking through an apartment, telling everyone this is a kitchen, this is a bathroom.
So you would advise any holiday home operator, even they are not brokers, to invest in personal branding?
100%. I think what you can do is, I think mine was a natural journey to where I got, but that's because I started doing it when it wasn't that popular. But now it's very competitive. So if you want to do it properly now, you have companies that train people how to actually lift them and how to do a personal brand. That's one way of doing it, where you actually do a training, or you actually get a PR or a branding company that then does all the thinking for you. They come up with the content, the ideas, they record, they shoot, they edit. You can go that side as well, which is what a lot of brokers tend to do now. They'd rather pay someone an X amount of money and let them do all the thinking. So it really depends. And for me, I wouldn't do that personally, because I want even my content to be more kind of genuine, what I'm thinking, as opposed to someone thinking of the ideas for me.
Yeah, but maybe because you have 10, 15, 20 years of experience.
Exactly. So I think maybe the guys with less experience have less ideas maybe to, coming up with. And that's a reason.
But with the competition going forward at the same time, the most genuine, the most connection you have with the client. So
100%. Yeah. And I think the more... And I think the more the person themselves are in the content where they're talking, and it's not just about, even with a lot of properties I've got some, beautiful properties, but if I was just posting videos about the properties, and then I compare that to the same property where I maybe do an intro, an outro, a little bit of interaction within the video, the feedback and the interaction I get back is much more than just me putting a nice looking video out there. So I think for sure you need to be part of the video if possible.
Can you share some metrics about your accounts, like some leads or something that can...
I'll give you just a very, very recent one actually. So I get a lot of sellers generally reach out to me on Instagram. So just in the last 2 weeks, I've had 2 sellers. So this is very recent ones I'm giving you. One was, and it was funny because both of them, I have a set routine in the morning. I go to the gym very early, and one of these sellers reached out to me at like 7:30 a.m. in the morning. And I get a lot of spam as well. So sometimes it's trying to understand what's a spam and what's not. So when I initially saw the message, I ignored it because I thought it was a developer from a certain country, and I just kind of ignored it. And then I got another message. And it was a voicemail. I thought, okay, let me open this message. And it was actually a seller who owned a penthouse on the Palm.
Wow.
And they said, we've been following you on Instagram for the last 5 years. We're now looking at selling our penthouse on the Palm. And who better than Mr. Palm Jumeirah to contact, right? And the lady was like, listen, what do you think? And I replied back, got a number, went the following day, met her, and then got the listing exclusive, a 16 million dirham penthouse. So, I mean, that's a listing I've got. And that's a very recent example. I'm not giving you examples from years ago. But I've had a lot of guys that have come through that have converted, that have become buyers, and have actually bought from me. And said, but I generally, for whatever reason, I tend to get more sellers. Of course, I get a lot of agents contacting me, but that's different.
Yeah, also can hiring, no? It can help with hiring.
Yes, of course.
Brand equity of the company.
Especially now I've got my own agency. I get a lot of newer brokers, or just brokers in general. They know that I've just had a new setup. I'm still looking at building the team. We're doing it very organically. I'm not in any rush to build a company. But I get a lot of reach out from agents as well. And a lot of the time, if they have a background that I like, I'll meet them for a coffee. Whether I'd go ahead with them or not is a different thing. But again, it's just expanding then my network as well of agents as well, which is also very important.
That's very important. Yeah. Very good. So Next Gen Rentals, we want to create a community of peers of equals in the property management when it comes to short-term rentals.
Yeah.
What's your view about the short-term rental industry?
See, it's very interesting. I mean, when I first moved here, obviously 2009, Short-term rentals were going on, but not very much, not very organized, and there was no system in place. And I remember there was, because I used to do the Palm Jumeirah villas were always extremely popular on short-term. And I used to do a lot of these short-term, but I just knew people that did them. But some of them didn't even have companies.
Yeah.
It was all word of mouth. It was all just sending you pictures and this is the weekly rates. And if a client wanted it, you'd basically connect them and then you'd make a fee out of it. It was all very kind of ad hoc the way it used to work. And there was not many companies doing it. I think I'd say in the last 6 to 7 years, it's changed massively. The whole ecosystem has changed. Dubai as a short-term holiday destination for rentals has gone dramatic in terms of numbers as well, as you well know. Yeah. And especially certain communities as well. And I think obviously the government stepping in, legalizing it, regulating it, it's all the DCCM, the licenses and so forth. I think it's brilliant because now by doing that, it's now become a very organized platform. It's professional companies doing it because you've got to be a professional company doing it. Because you need to have the license and you need to have a whole team behind you, right? For booking, for cleaning, for submitting the paperwork to DTCM and so forth. So I think it's now very streamlined. But with anything, when there's an industry that sees a growth, you then see a growth in competition. Correct. And companies as well. So I see there's a lot of companies in the market. Similar to real estate agencies, there's some very good ones and some not so good ones, and there's some kind of in the middle, right? Not so good, but whatever, right? And it's trying to figure out which ones you want to. Same with real estate, like which agencies do you deal with because you just don't know, right? And there's a lot of companies that don't know what they're doing. The brokers don't know what they're doing, and there's some that are extremely well. They've been here for years and they've got really experienced guys, right? And I think that's the way now the short term's happening. There's a lot of really, really good companies. I mean, I deal with a few on the Palm, for example. Very, very good, very streamlined, very smooth. It's very easy. You pass the client to them and everything's taken care of. So I think that's great because it's made government stepping in, competition rising, more companies has made sure that everyone has to be a certain standard. Otherwise, no one will use you, right? So I think, the way the industry's gone, I think it's great for Dubai. A lot of people are investing in Dubai with that knowledge of maybe let's buy, especially if it's a beachfront community or one of these kind of business hubs like DIFC or downtown, right, where people can really see the returns. Because ultimately, when you compare long-term and short-term, in some communities, you want to do long-term rentals because you're never going to make short-term rentals out of it. So you're wasting your time, right? Then there's certain communities like the beachfront communities, like where the business guys are staying for a week or two, where if you do a cross comparison, the short-term rentals quite significantly outweighs in terms of your return compared to a long-term rental. Plus you then have the flexibility of selling when you want because you can, maybe 2 or 3 months at there.
Correct.
You also have a flexibility as an owner, maybe for your family to stay when they're here. So I think there's so many pros of having the short-term rentals. I think more and more people are more open to that idea as well. But it all depends on the individual. Some people, some of the old school guys, for example, especially on the Palm and more prime communities, some of the tenants still pay in one check. So some of these landlords are like, well, if I can get 500,000 in one go, I'm happy with that because rather than getting paid monthly. So I get it. So everyone's individual. And then for them, that 500, they can put it into and then make 10% on it, right? Correct. And that's how they see it. So they like, actually, it's 550. So I get it. So everyone's different in terms of how they view investments. But I think more and more people are liking the short-term rentals. A lot of developers are building properties that I would say, you look at Emaar Beachfront as a community. I think that was built purely for short-term rentals.
Absolutely.
It's booming. You see what the guys have paid their original prices, you see their income, you're talking double digits. Beautiful community, beachfront, views, it ticks all the boxes what people want on holiday, right? So I think this is where, developers have kind of upped their game as well. So I think as a whole ecosystem, I think Dubai, when it comes to short term, it's an incredible space to be in.
I agree. Very good. So we're reaching the end.
Okay.
We're always finish with a question is like, where do you find inspiration? Do you follow podcasts? Do you read any book that really inspired you?
Yeah. So I think initially I used to watch a lot of $1 Million Listing, which is a US TV show. Interestingly enough, that show has come to Dubai. It's called $1 Million Listing UAE.
True.
It was season 1.
In which platform?
It's on Stars Play.
Okay.
I used to love that show, and I thought it'd be amazing to be on it. And funnily enough, obviously the TV show came to Dubai, and I was a guest appearance, and I'm actually on 3 of the episodes, which is quite interesting. Side story. So that was from watching that show, there's agents like Ryan Serhan and there's Frederick Eklund, 2 very, very good prominent agents in the US. And I think the US guys in general are just a bit, not just a bit, but very ahead in terms of their marketing, their self-branding. So I think if you want to learn, if you want to really be good at what you're doing, you want to be doing what those guys are doing, because I think they're always one step ahead of the game anyway. And obviously they come from very, very mature markets. Dubai is a very, very young market in comparison. So for me, I've read a lot of their books. At the same time, I also read, I like, there's an app called Mind Valley. Mind Valley is more about kind of, conscious engineering, conscious living, making sure that your life is not just about running after money and, money. Basically having a balance in life. So I read a lot of meditation, gratitude, manifestation. I did a lot of stuff from Robin Sharma. He actually, I think he was at COVID time when I got into it, when I started reading Robin Sharma. And then since then, I've developed certain things I do in the morning, prayer and meditation and so forth.
The 5 a.m. club?
I did the 5 a.m. club for 2 years, funnily enough. Now it's become the 6 a.m. club. So what I've done is ultimately you have to follow your body's needs as well. So I've now, customized it to my needs. But I follow a lot of the principles from there. I follow a lot of principles from the things I listen to at Mind Valley as well. I think it's very important every day you're spending maybe 30 minutes to an hour educating yourself. And that's where the growth mindset comes in. If you're not educating yourself on a daily basis, you're going to be left behind. So I think I think with all that combined, books I read, podcasts I listen to as well, and then just trying to make sure that ultimately you can be a street sweeper, you could be a CEO. We're all going to have the same ending at the end, right? So it's so important that people are just nice. I think people sometimes forget the niceness, the humanity in people as well. I think people get so obsessed with the shiny cars, and especially Dubai is a very money-oriented place. I think if people sometimes just take a step back and just be good humans to each other, and I think I'm working on it. I'm not saying I'm perfect, and I think if more people were working on that as well as having a balance, with your life, with your mindset, with your health. Health again being something that's very important to me as well. Your spirituality. Any emotions and heart. So there's a lot of things there, and I try and work and balance everything as much as possible. It's a learning curve. We're all learning. We're all on a journey, as you know. So I think the last 3-4 years I've become more entwined to that, and I think it's really made a difference to me as well. And at the end of the day, my kids they're going to see me. I want to be their mentor. I never really had a mentor growing up, and nothing against my family. I was brought up in a very different way. So I'd want my kids to at least have, more than just a father figure. So I think if you can do as much as you can, good. And then, hopefully the newer generation can also kind of follow suit as well.
Excellent. Yeah. So with this beautiful end note, we will leave it here.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the invite. I really appreciate it as well.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next Gen Rentals is brought to you by our main sponsor, Mr. Alfred. Mr. Alfred specializes in making vacation rental management effortless.